Last time, two warriors, one pair of magic earrings, and a fusion that never let go. Goku and Vegeta became Vegito, permanently, one man where two used to be. But every time he reaches for a god's power, the earrings burn hotter, and the strain never fully cools. He caught the eye of a destroyer, crushed Golden Frieza, and became Beerus' champion, who paraded him across the multiverse. But in one quiet universe, a god's apprentice named Zamasu watched that mortal humiliate him, and began to dream of a world wiped clean of mortals. Now Beerus' twin brother brings a tournament, two universes, wish-granting orbs the size of planets, and a fire about to be pushed past its limit. On Beerus' world, the morning started with fists. Vegito and the God of Destruction traded blows across the red rock of the sacred planet, sparring the way they had been sparring for months now. Beerus holding back to a level that still made the air crack and the ground split. Vegito pushing into that gap with everything he had. They weren't keeping score. This was two beings who treated power as a shared language, speaking it fluently, the clashes ringing out across the empty horizon like bells made of violence. Beerus caught a straight punch and threw Vegito sideways, the fused warrior flipping once and landing clean on a spire of rock that crumbled under his boots. Beerus yawned, scratching his ear with one claw.
Not bad. You're getting better at reading the angle before I commit. Still too slow on the follow-through, though. You telegraph with your shoulder.
Yeah, well, you telegraph with your whole face. Every time you're about to do something, you scrunch up your nose like a cat about to sneeze.
I do not scrunch.
The spar broke off when a small ship drifted down from the sky and settled onto the landing pad with a modest hiss of exhaust. A stocky figure climbed out carrying a stack of sealed boxes, round-eyed behind a pair of goggles. A delivery uniform stretched across a frame that was solidly, unremarkably ordinary. Monaka had arrived with Beerus' shipment from across the galaxy, and the God of Destruction straightened up immediately, his tail curling with theatrical satisfaction.
Ah, finally. Monaka, my shipments, excellent, and good timing, because my other fighter here was just about to ask who the real strongest in the universe is.
Vegito looked at Monaka, then at Beerus, then back at Monaka, his face cycling through confusion and genuine curiosity. Monaka was a short, red-skinned alien, carrying delivery boxes while sweating bullets, standing in front of two beings who could unmake solar systems.
Wait, what? Hold on. This is your number one?
This is Monaka, the strongest fighter I have ever personally encountered. He suppresses his energy to a level you can't even register, which is why you can't feel anything from him. Consider yourself second best, Vegito, a distant second.
Vegito stared at Monaka for a long beat, and the courier stared back, and the courier's eyes were very wide and very terrified in a way that did not match the word strongest at all. But Vegito's grin was already spreading, the old reflex, the one that kicked in whenever something interesting stood in front of him, and he cracked his knuckles with one hand and tilted his head.
Is that so? Hey, Monaka, wanna spar with me real quick? Just a light one. I'd love to see what you can do in action.
Monaka's face went through three stages. First, polite confusion. Second, dawning horror. Third, a sweat bead the size of a marble rolling down his temple as his mouth opened and closed without producing sound. Beerus moved faster than either of them expected. His hand came down on top of Vegito's skull with a crack that echoed off the rocks, and the fused warrior staggered sideways, clutching his head.
No! You will not spar with Monaka!
Are you insane? He is capable of destroying the microcosm of an entire universe if he cuts loose. This is my sacred planet, and I am not having it reduced to dust because you wanted to test yourself.
Vegito rubbed the growing lump on his head, glancing between Beerus and the trembling courier with an expression that was suspicious and amused in equal measure. Whis, standing at the edge of the training ground with his staff resting against his shoulder, turned his head just enough to hide the quietest possible laugh behind one gloved hand, his shoulders shaking once before he composed himself entirely. Beerus grunted, waved Monaka off, already bored with him, and turned toward the temple. Monaka climbed back into his ship with the speed of a man escaping a burning building and was gone. Champa came that afternoon, and Beerus took it the way he took everything that wasn't food or sleep, with maximum irritation and minimum grace. His twin brother's face filled the projection, purple and round and permanently smug, and the two gods began shouting at each other before the first sentence was finished.
Beerus! You lazy, scrawny excuse for a destroyer! I hear you've been hoarding some little mortal pet who thinks he can fight gods! I came all this way to see the joke for myself!
At least my mortal can actually fight, Champa. I'd tell you to look in a mirror, but I doubt your eyes can see past your third chin.
The insult landed somewhere Champa did not appreciate, and the two gods were shoving each other across the sacred floor within seconds, fists and tails flailing, twin destroyers rolling like overgrown children, fighting over the last seat on a bus. Vados watched from the sideline with her staff balanced against her shoulder, a gloved hand covering a polite smile, thoroughly entertained by the predictable ritual of two eternal beings who had never learned to share. The wrestling match broke apart when Champa remembered why he had come. He had spent years collecting the Super Dragon Balls, 7 planet-sized orbs scattered across the boundary between universes 6 and 7, relics capable of granting any wish within the boundaries of creation, and he was missing only the final one, which rested somewhere in his brother's territory.
I want that last orb, Beerus. And since your Earth still exists and mine doesn't, and I do so miss the cuisine, I propose we settle this properly. 5 fighters from each universe. A tournament. Winner takes the orb and the Earth.
Beerus accepted before his brother finished the sentence, driven entirely by the certainty that his champion would humiliate Champa's roster. Vados tilted her head with the dry serenity that ran in her family.
A rather elegant way to settle a sibling squabble, my lord. Planet-sized wish orbs as the prize. Do try not to destroy anything important during the proceedings.
Beerus waved her off, already plotting, and turned to Whis, already gloating. With the wager set, Whis summoned his glass-like transport cube, ferrying the group across the cosmos. Within the hour, they touched down on Earth in the courtyard of Capsule Corporation, so the recruitment could begin. Vegito stood in the driveway with his arms crossed, already grinning at the idea of a tournament, while Beerus paced in front of him, laying out terms fast. To him, strategy was just stalling with extra steps.
5 fighters. I need 5, and you're 1, which means I need 4 more, and I need them now, because I refuse to lose to my brother over a staffing problem.
Vegito didn't waste time traveling. He brought 2 fingers to his forehead and vanished from the courtyard, materializing an instant later on the dirt path outside the mountain house. Chi-Chi was already in the yard, hanging laundry on the line. She saw him appear and stopped what she was doing. And the look she gave him, the one that read what's wrong before he opened his mouth, was the look of someone who'd spent years learning to read a face that was only half familiar. He told her about the tournament. She did not ask about the stakes. She asked one question.
How bad is it going to be on you?
Probably not great. There's supposed to be an assassin from the other universe who can do something with time. I'll manage.
You always say you'll manage. You said that about the golden one, and you came home and couldn't hear out of your left ear for a week.
She did not argue. She went inside and came back with a pen and a notepad and started writing a grocery list that was 3 times longer than it needed to be. Because the only way Chi-Chi knew how to say be careful was to make sure there would be enough food when they all came back. Capsule Corporation was already buzzing when he arrived. Bulma had cleared one of the lab's conference tables and spread it with star charts, scanner readouts, and the half-eaten sandwich she had forgotten about 3 hours ago. She did not look up when he walked in. Beerus had mentioned the Super Dragon Balls in passing the day before, planet-sized wish orbs scattered across both universes, and Bulma had not slept since, because a god with the attention span of a cat sitting on top of a wish that could reshape reality was not a thing she was willing to trust.
Beerus let it slip about the Super Dragon Balls. Planet-sized any wish, scattered across both universes. He had that look he gets when he's thinking about food or destruction, and I couldn't tell which one. I'm building a radar to track them, but I need more data before I can calibrate it, and there's only one source for that.
What source?
Master Zuno. He knows everything. Jocko knows the route. We leave today.
You don't trust Beerus with a wish, do you?
I don't trust Beerus with a vending machine. If he gets to those orbs and decides Earth is more trouble than it's worth, there won't be a home to come back to.
The ritual of competence she used to keep the fear in its cage, because the fear was about a god with the power to erase her planet on a whim, and the only thing standing between him and that whim was her ability to find the last ball first. She left that afternoon with Jocko, and the journey to Zuno's sanctum was long and uneventful, and filled with the Galactic Patrolman's running commentary on his own accomplishments, delivered with a confidence that had never once been earned, and never once wavered either. Bulma let him talk. She was composing her questions in her head, sorting them by priority, discarding the ones she could afford to not know and keeping the ones she could not. Zuno granted women 3 questions per visit, and she was not going to waste a single one. Zuno's sanctum was a quiet, ordered place floating in the deep cosmos. After Bulma provided the required tribute, the all-knowing being opened the floor for exactly 3 questions. Jocko immediately stepped forward, leaned in with a conspiratorial smirk, and asked the cosmic entity for the exact measurements of Bulma's bust. Zuno answered the galactic patrolman with deadpan, humiliating precision, and explicitly stated that the first of their 3 questions had just been spent. Bulma didn't yell. She simply grabbed Jocko by the collar, hurled him down the stone steps, and took his place to salvage the mission.
Second question.
She snapped, smoothing her jacket.
What exactly are the Super Dragon Balls, and where do I find them?
Zuno explained that they were perfect, planet-sized spheres created by the dragon god Zalama, currently scattered across universes 6 and 7. Bulma's mind raced, doing the math instantly. If they were the size of planets, they emitted a massive, distinct energy signature. Building a radar to track them would be trivial. The logistics were solved, which left her with exactly 1 question. She looked down at her hands, the weight of the last 5 years pressing tight against the back of her throat. When she finally looked back up at the hovering being, her voice was entirely devoid of its usual demanding authority.
Third question.
She said quietly.
Can the Super Dragon Balls separate a permanent Potara fusion?
The silence in the sanctum seemed to stretch, heavy and still, before Zuno confirmed that the divine orbs could grant any wish without limitation, including the severing of a Potara bond. Bulma's hand began to tremble. The metal stylus slipped from her numb fingers and clattered loudly against the pristine stone floor. She didn't look down. She didn't pick it up. A sharp, ragged breath escaped her lips, breaking the dead silence of the hall. The absolute certainty of her grief had just cracked wide open, undone by a single word. Jocko, watching from behind, wisely decided to keep his mouth completely shut. Piccolo was the next recruit, and Gohan went to find him himself. The Namekian was meditating on the roof of the lookout when the scholar arrived, and he opened one eye and spoke before Gohan could get a word out.
Let me guess. Beerus needs fighters for something stupid, and you're here because you think I'll say yes if you're the one asking.
That's exactly why I'm here.
I don't do tournaments for amusement, Gohan. I fight when there's a real threat, not to settle a wager between 2 overgrown house cats who can't share their toys.
Gohan sat down on the ledge beside him, and for a long moment, the only sound was the cold, steady wind of the lookout. When Gohan finally spoke, he kept his eyes fixed on the distant horizon.
It's been 5 years. We've all just gotten so used to it. The 2 of them just being him. And he makes it look so easy. But I know what happens every time he pushes his power now. I know about the strain on those earrings.
Piccolo opened one eye, listening quietly as Gohan rubbed the back of his neck with a self-deprecating sigh.
I know I'm completely out of shape, Piccolo. I haven't been keeping up with my training at all. But if he goes into this tournament, and that strain finally catches up to him, I just need to be there, just in case he falls.
Piccolo looked at his student. Gohan wasn't a warrior at heart, but the moment his father's safety was in question, the scholar put down his books without a second thought. A faint, genuine smile crossed the Namekian's face, and he stood up, his heavy white cape snapping in the wind.
You have been slacking, Gohan, but your instincts are still in the right place. Fine, I'm coming too. Someone has to watch your back while you're watching his.
Goten found out from Trunks, who found out by eavesdropping outside the lab when Vegito was delivering the news to his mother. The result was immediate. The 2 boys erupted through the back doors of Capsule Corporation like a pair of fireworks, already shouting about Gotenks, already arguing over their entrance poses, and already planning a victory celebration for a cosmic tournament no one had actually invited them to yet.
Dad, we're going to fight in a tournament! Trunks says we can fuse and be Gotenks and fight people from another universe.
Slow down! Nobody said you're going yet!
We have to. We've been training for months. We're way better than we used to be. And you need 4 fighters. And you've only got 3. And we count as 1 when we fuse. So technically we're the answer to your math problem.
Vegito looked at the 2 boys standing in front of him, one bright and uncomplicated, the other sharp and already building a logical case, and the grin that crossed his face was genuine and tired at the same time.
You want to fight? Fine, but you train for it first. Real training, not just flying around the backyard pretending you're in a cartoon. We go into the hyperbolic time chamber, and we don't come out until I'm satisfied.
What's the hyperbolic time chamber?
Hey, Goten, don't you remember? We trained there once with Mr. Piccolo? It's that room at the lookout, where time moves different. One day outside is a whole year inside.
Oh wow, that was for a whole year? I don't remember much at all. That sounds intense. But hey, do they have good food in there? I don't think I can handle a whole year again.
Vegito paused. The Goku half of his brain vividly remembered the pantry in that endless white void. It was technically stocked, yes, but only with the barest, most joyless survival rations. Endless supplies of plain flour, water, and dense, flavorless biscuits meant solely to sustain a warrior's body, not excite it. A wicked, distinctly Vegeta-like smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth as he chose to lie by omission.
Oh, they have food, Goten! You're going to love it!
Then I'm in!
Before they left for the lookout, the yard had one last quiet visitor. Krillin dropped by Capsule Corporation in civilian clothes, fully settled into his laid-back life as a husband and father. He found Vegito leaning against a training post, waiting while the boys packed their gear inside.
So you're dragging the kids up to the time chamber, a multiverse tournament, huh? The stakes just keep getting higher, and you just keep standing right in the middle of them.
Somebody's got to. Besides, Beerus threw a tantrum, and you know how he gets when he doesn't get his way.
Krillin laughed, but it faded into a quiet, measuring look. He had known Goku since they were children, and standing in front of the man who was only half his best friend still carried a strange weight, even after 5 years.
I gotta ask, man, I still don't really know how to wrap my head around it sometimes. What's it actually like in there? Are you Goku with Vegeta's voice in your head, or…
It's both, Krillin, and neither. We don't take turns driving. It's just… me.
Krillin studied his face for a second, looking for his oldest friend in the fused warrior's eyes, and then he smiled. The easy, familiar smile of a guy who had made peace with his own limits long ago.
Well, me better win this thing. I've got 18 and Mayron to take care of. And I'm officially retired. I'm leaving the universe saving to the guy who's literally built for it.
Vegito bumped fists with him just as the back doors banged open. Goten and Trunks erupted into the yard, arguing loudly while dragging bags halfway twice their size. They head to the hyperbolic time chamber the next morning, and Vegito stepped through with Goten and Kid Trunks at his side, the three of them crossing the threshold into the white void that would be their world for the next 3 years. The door sealed behind them, and the silence of the place was absolute, a flat, featureless emptiness that stretched to every horizon, and the boys stood at the edge of it looking small in a way they would not look for long. The training started entirely with fundamentals. Vegito broke their forms down to nothing and rebuilt them, stance by stance, guard by guard, correcting habits they did not know they had. He was patient in a way that surprised them both, stopping mid-spar to adjust a fist's angle by 2 inches, to shift a foot's placement by 1, to explain why a dodge that worked against a slow opponent would get them killed against a fast one. The boys were strong. They were not precise, and precision was the thing that kept you alive when raw power was not enough. Once their base forms were sharp, they moved to the fusion, and Vegito drilled them on maintaining composure after the merge, on keeping Gotenks' personality from running away with the fight. He could not teach them to be less arrogant, because arrogance was baked into the fusion the way heat was baked into a forge. But he could teach them to channel it, to finish fights instead of performing them, to treat an opponent as a threat rather than an audience. By the end of their time in the chamber, the difference was night and day. Vegito caught a heavy punch from the fused boy, pushed him back a few feet, and lowered his own hands with a satisfied smirk.
Good. Your guard is tight, and you're finally not telegraphing that left hook. All right, no more warm-ups. Both of you, come at me with everything you've got.
Gotenks didn't need to be told twice. He struck his favorite pose and pushed straight into Super Saiyan 3, the familiar, overwhelming torrent of golden ki cracking the white floor of the chamber. The first exchange was explosive, Gotenks coming in hot with Super Saiyan 3 speed and throwing combinations that were finally as precise as they were powerful. Vegito handled them in base form, wasting no motion. 2 lifetimes of fighting distilled into every block.
Not bad. The left hook's still telegraphing, though. You wind it from the hip instead of the shoulder, and that gives me a half second to see it coming. Tighten that up.
Oh, you want tight? I'll show you tight.
But the showing off did not stop. Gotenks launched into a string of named techniques, shouting each one louder than the last. pausing mid-combo to strike a pose, narrating his own attacks like a sportscaster calling a game. The power was real. The focus was not.
You're spending more time talking than hitting.
It's called style, old man. You wouldn't understand.
I understand that while you're busy posing and naming your attacks, a real fighter is mapping your blind spots. You have the power to end fights. Use it. Finish your opponents. Stop giving them a free window to figure you out.
Gotenks did not listen. Gotenks charged, full fury, full confidence, swinging wild and wide and proud. Vegito hit him once. One blow, base form, open palm, placed precisely on the center of Gotenks' chest. The aura snuffed out like a candle in a hurricane. The fusion held for one stunned second, and then Gotenks split apart in a flash of light. Goten and Kid Trunks tumbling across the white floor in separate heaps, stunned and breathing hard. Vegito walked over and crouched between them, his face serious but not hard, the disappointment in his eyes tempered by something warmer underneath.
You guys are strong. You actually could have beaten me on raw power just now. But all that muscle means exactly nothing if you're too busy giving a speech to use it. You traded a clean knockout for a chance to strike a pose, and it gave me a wide-open window to drop you. I need you to finish your fights, not narrate them.
Goten sat up, rubbing his chest, but it was Trunks who spoke first, shoving himself off the floor with the particular indignation of a boy being told to drop the one thing he'd learned from watching his hero.
But Dad, you always show off how awesome you are when you're fighting.
The words hung there in the white, and Vegito didn't answer right away, because the kid had him, and they both knew it.
Yeah, I know.
He tapped the edge of the earring with one finger, the gesture almost absent.
You two know exactly what happens to me now. Every time I push my limits, these burn. I've fought beings since then that made Boo look like a warm-up, and every one of those battles taught me the exact same lesson. Every second I spend showing off is a second I'm letting this fusion eat me alive. It wasn't luck that kept me standing. It was power. But power doesn't mean a damn thing if your own body gives out before you land the last hit. When everything is on the line, you don't play games. You finish it fast. I'm asking you to be smarter than I used to be. Don't give anyone the room to figure you out.
Both boys went quiet, and this time they weren't sulking, they were listening. 3 years ended. 3 days passed outside. They emerged from the chamber into the sunlight of the lookout, and Dende was there waiting with a tray of water, and the boys drank like they had crossed a desert, and Vegito stood at the railing and looked out at the world that had continued without them for 2 minutes and 47 hours of their lives. He was sharper than he had gone in. The boys were sharper too, their movements cleaner, their eyes steadier. Whether it would be enough was a question the tournament would answer. The night before departure, the border house filled with people. Chi-Chi had been cooking since dawn, turning worry into work, the only trick she'd ever needed. At the kitchen table, Bulma ran final calibrations on her radar. They shared the comfortable, lived-in quiet of old friends, until Bulma paused, looking over her screen with a deliberate smirk.
I've been reviewing the rules for these Super Dragon Balls. If my source is right, there are absolutely no limits to what they can grant. I mean, 0.
The massive implications sailed right past Chi-Chi, who didn't even stop stirring the stove. To her, giant wishing orbs were just more cosmic nonsense dragging her family into danger, and her mind was grounded entirely in the practical reality of feeding them first.
That's nice, Bulma. Just make sure Beerus actually lets us use them if someone gets hurt tomorrow.
Bulma didn't correct her. She just gave a faint, knowing wink and went back to typing, keeping the secret to herself. For the first time in 5 years, she was packing something stronger than hope. Gohan arrived with Videl, who carried Baby Pan on her hip, settling into a chair with an exhausted relief. Piccolo stood in the doorway, too large for the frame, clearly out of place at parties. Here, anyway, because these were his people. Beerus draped himself across the couch like a cat who owned the furniture, and Whis stood behind him with the patient stillness of an attendant who had stood behind worse. The boys were electric, running through the house, practicing their fusion dance in the yard, shouting technique names through the screen door. Goten collided with Videl's chair and apologized. Trunks corrected his form and got told to mind his own business. Beerus stole a dumpling from the platter, and Chi-Chi slapped his hand with a spatula, and the god of destruction stared at her. Genuinely stunned, a mortal had just hit him with a spatula, and Whis turned his laugh into a cough. Vegito sat at the head of the table, eating steadily, the only person in the room who was calm. He kept steady watch over the room. The weight of it settled into his shoulders. The chaos and the warmth and the friction and the love, all tangled together in a house that existed because two families had lost the same thing on the same day. He did not say much. He ate and he watched. The watching was the thing, holding it all in his eyes because his arms couldn't. Piccolo found him on the porch later, after the house had finally settled into sleep. The Namekian leaned against the wooden railing, looking out at the dark tree line for a long moment before breaking the quiet.
Your ki has been flickering all night. Every time you take a deep breath, it spikes and drops. How bad is the strain?
It's manageable. Just a dull ache.
You're a terrible liar. You've got Goku's face and Vegeta's pride, which means you're going to push yourself until something breaks just to prove you can.
Vegito let out a short, tired laugh. He rubbed the back of his neck, the casual, bulletproof confidence slipping just enough to show the real weight he was carrying underneath.
It feels like standing too close to a bonfire. The harder I push, the hotter the earrings get. But I'll hold it together, like I always do.
Piccolo smirked.
Just remember you aren't the only one stepping into that ring tomorrow. If you start burning out, step back and let the rest of us take the heat. That's what we're here for.
Vegito looked at the Namekian, the quiet solidarity landing exactly where it was needed. He didn't offer a cocky promise or brush the concern away. He just nodded once, and the two of them watched the stars in the comfortable silence of warriors who understood the assignment. The next morning, Whis' massive transport cube lifted from Capsule Corporation, leaving the blue marble of Earth shrinking into the blackness of deep space. Inside the transparent vessel, the group's usual chaos settled into a tight, quiet hum of anticipation. Piccolo, standing silently in the corner with his arms crossed, and Goten and Trunks pressing their faces against the glass to watch the stars blur past. Across from them, Bulma kept her eyes locked on her radar, watching it cycle through frequencies in search of the final Super Dragon Ball, keeping her newfound secret completely to herself. The nameless planet unfolded beneath them as they descended, a barren stretch of rock under a sky with no sun, dominated by 6 glowing spheres the size of small moons hanging in the black overhead. The scale of it silenced even Goten's chatter for a moment, the whole family staring up at wishes big enough to swallow worlds, and the silence held until Boo broke it by asking if anyone had brought snacks. The arena was a massive stone platform suspended in the void, ringed with spectator stands that were already filling with beings from across both universes. The Universe 6 team stood at the opposite end of the platform, and their roster was strange and formidable. Botamo, a rotund yellow creature who seemed to absorb the air around him. Frost, a sleek figure whose elegant bearing and gentle smile concealed something that his eyes did not. Vegeta, a giant of living metal, steam curling from the seams of his frame. Cabba, a young Saiyan in blue-black armor, his tail absent, his posture military and precise. And Hit, silent and still, hands tucked into the pockets of his long coat, radiating a cold pressure that made the air around him feel thicker. In the spectator stands, the divine guests were assembling. Shin, the supreme Kai of Universe 7, hovered at the rail with his attendant Kibito. The two of them fused into the single being, Kibito Kai, who watched the arena, his face carrying the quiet math of being two people who never got a vote. Beside him, the Elder Kai complained about the seating arrangement, grumbling through it like he'd been dragged to a restaurant he never picked.
These seats are atrocious. I've been alive for millions of years, and I'm expected to watch a tournament from the same section as a pack of mortal spectators.
It's a tournament between mortals, Elder. The seating is appropriate.
Appropriate. Everything's appropriate when you're young enough to think appropriateness matters.
The two of them bickered with the worn ease of relatives who had been sharing the same space for too long. Vegito's attention snapped to Cabba the instant he registered the young man's stance. The bone structure, the unmistakable Saiyan physiology standing across the arena in a stranger's armor. He crossed the platform before anyone could stop him, and the Universe 6 team tensed, and Cabba stepped backward with his hand finding a weapon that was not there, and the two Saiyans stood facing each other with the platform between them.
You're a Saiyan.
You're one too. I didn't know there were any left in your universe. Your energy feels strange though, like two people standing in one body.
Yeah, that's a whole conversation on its own. Where's your homeworld? Where do Saiyans come from in your universe?
Planet Sadala. It's still there, still ours. We don't have tails anymore. We outgrew that a long time ago. We protect the weak. That's what we're for.
Something shifted in Vegito's face at that. A stillness taut enough to read as its opposite. A man standing in front of a version of his people that had never been enslaved, never been hollowed out and sold to a tyrant, never been erased from existence because a monster decided they were inconvenient. He looked at Cabba a beat too long, the look of someone staring down a road he never got to take, before he caught himself and grinned.
My planet's gone, blown up centuries back. You've got no idea how lucky you are, kid, standing there whole like that.
Before the tournament could begin, Vegito insisted on a basic written exam to screen the fighters, wanting to ensure they weren't just fighting mindless beasts who couldn't follow the rules. It was a perfectly logical request that immediately backfired. The fighters crowded around a folding table with pencils and papers, working through the 10 basic questions with the varying speeds of people who had very different relationships with literacy. Boo stared at his blank paper for exactly 4 seconds before his head hit the table and he began to snore, loud and contented, a sound like a small engine idling. Goten and Kid Trunks dissolved into stifled giggling beside him. Vegito leaned over and shook Boo's shoulder.
Boo! Boo, wake up! It's a test, not a nap!
Boo did not wake up. Piccolo pinched the bridge of his nose. Gohan tried and failed to hide a laugh behind his exam sheet. Beerus looked at the snoring pink mass, and then at Whis with an expression that asked, without words, whether erasing his own fighter was an option. The exam results came back, and Boo had failed, which eliminated him from the tournament before it had even begun.
Remind me again why you insisted on a written exam.
Yeah, go ahead and put this one on me. I wanted to filter out mindless beasts. I didn't calculate for aggressive narcolepsy.
The god of destruction and his champion shared a long, synchronized exhale as their roster was reduced through an act of narcolepsy. Goten and Trunks passed, barely, and the fusion dance was approved, and Gotenks was officially entered as the 4th fighter, and the boys celebrated by bumping chests so hard they both staggered. The first match was Piccolo versus Botamo. The Namekian stepped onto the arena stone and immediately went on the offensive, but his opening flurry of strikes did absolutely nothing. Botamo was a massive, rubbery creature, whose body simply absorbed kinetic impact, every punch thrown at him bouncing off like rain off a window, and the crowd murmured as Piccolo's first strikes landed and did nothing at all. Piccolo did not throw a second round of useless punches. He stood still, studying the creature's physiology, and then he moved, seizing Botamo's wrists mid-charge, pivoting his hips, and using the creature's own massive momentum to whirl him around and pitch him bodily over the boundary line. Botamo hit the void beyond the ring like a beach ball thrown from a cliff, and Piccolo turned away without watching him fall, adjusting his cape with one hand. In the staging area, Vegito watched and nodded once. Beerus, beside him, was already complaining about the lack of spectacle.
He could have at least made it look interesting. A throw? That's a wrestling move, not a tournament finish.
It worked!
Working isn't the point. Looking good while working is the point.
Vegito did not dignify that with a response, because the god of destruction was wrong about most things that were not combat, and arguing about aesthetics with a being who wore his laziness as a fashion statement was a waste of breath. Piccolo's second match was against Frost, and it began with a burst of energy gathering at the Namekian's fingertips, the special beam cannon charging with a high, whining pitch that cut through the arena noise. Frost answered with a volley of glittering death beams that screamed across the stone, and Piccolo wove through most of them, but one punched clean through his thigh, and he dropped hard to one knee with a grunt that echoed across the platform. Refusing to yield, Piccolo split himself into 4 identical copies with a shout. The 4 Namekians surrounding Frost from every angle at once, fists raised and the trap closing. Frost simply smiled, spread his arms, and detonated a wave of golden energy that scattered every clone into smoke, leaving only the real Piccolo standing amid the fading afterimages, wounded and outmaneuvered. Piccolo lunged anyway, his arms stretching unnaturally to wrap around Frost's torso in a vice grip, while his other hand charged a killing blow at point-blank range.
Clever, truly, but I've got a trick of my own.
A hidden needle in Frost's wrist grazed Piccolo's skin, and a sudden, violent dizziness swallowed him whole, his charged attack firing harmlessly into the sky as his legs buckled and he crumpled over the boundary line, clutching his head. The grandstands descended into immediate chaos. Vegeta was on his feet in a second, his eyes locked on the ring, his jaw tight, because he knew a fighter like Piccolo wouldn't just collapse from a single hit. Beerus stood beside him, with his tail lashing, already barking across the arena at his brother, to demand an explanation. It was Jocko who caught the trick. Squinting through the settling dust with his specialized dynamic eyesight, the Galactic Patrolman pointed a sharp finger down at Universe 6's supposed hero, shouting over the noise that he had seen the glint of a concealed needle in Frost's right wrist, just before the punch landed. The fight was rigged, a poison weapon. The crowd's confused murmur rapidly twisted into an angry roar as the accusation echoed across the arena. Frost stood in the center of the ring with his hands raised and his hero's smile still fixed in place, the smile of a cheat who hadn't yet realized his cover was completely blown.
A concealed poison needle? Is that what your universe calls a hero, Champa? You cheating hack?
I didn't know. I swear Vados picked him out. I thought he actually ran a peace charity or something.
The referee raised a microphone, stepping forward to declare the official disqualification, but Gohan was already moving. He dropped down onto the arena stone with a cold, quiet anger that the scholar rarely showed.
No, leave him in.
As Gohan walked past the edge of the ring, Piccolo didn't try to hold him back, offering only a low, brief warning to watch his guard against any more hidden tricks. Gohan didn't answer. He didn't offer Frost a hand, a greeting, or a chance to explain. His power surged to life in a brilliant white aura, and he closed the distance in a single step, his first strike landing before the cheat had even finished lowering his hands. The fight was short and brutal and completely one-sided. Gohan systematically broke Frost's guard, each strike landing with a precision that had nothing to do with Frost and everything to do with whatever Gohan was actually angry about. The final blow was an overhead kinetic smash that drove Frost into the stone hard enough to crater it, and the hero of Universe 6 lay in the depression unconscious, his hidden needles scattered across the arena floor like the confetti of an exposed fraud. Gohan turned and walked back to the staging area without celebrating, and Vegito caught his eye as he passed, and the two of them exchanged a look that was brief and sufficient, the look of a father and a son who did not need words to communicate the thing between them, which was pride, and which was also worry, because the next fight would not be won with anger alone. Gohan's next opponent was Vegeta, and at Champa's signal, Vados dropped a transparent, airtight barrier over the ring. The metal giant's internal furnace immediately transformed the enclosed arena into a forge, thick heat rippling the trapped air until the stone itself began to glow. Up in the spectator stands, Chi-Chi pressed her both hands together, her breath catching in her throat as she watched her son get locked inside a literal oven. Gohan didn't wait for the oxygen to burn up. He opened with a flurry of heavy kicks aimed at Vegeta's head, the impact shearing the molten dome clean off his shoulders in a burst of steam, only for the liquid metal to bubble and reform with an amused hiss. Vegeta spat a gout of lava across the stage, forcing Gohan into a scrambling retreat, the ground behind him hardening into black glass with every near miss. Gohan flared to his limit and countered with a wide beam of energy, and the two attacks met in a hissing collision of light and rock that filled the arena with choking smog, visibility dropping to nothing. Coughing through the haze, Gohan cornered the metal giant against the barrier and unloaded everything he had left in one final punch, and Vegeta tipped backward off the edge of the ring with a resigned metallic groan. But the heat had drained Gohan completely, and gasping for breath, the young scholar dropped to one knee and raised a hand to signal he was stepping down, and the crowd applauded with the genuine warmth of spectators who recognized a fighter who had given everything. In the stands, Chi-Chi finally let out a trembling breath, her white-knuckled grip on the railing loosening only when she saw her exhausted son safely step down from the ring. Beside her, Bulma wasn't looking at the arena at all. She had her scanner out, tracking the erratic energy output of Vegito's earrings down in the staging area. Goten and Kid Trunks bounded into the ring next, struck their poses, and fused into Gotenks in a flash of golden light, the fused boy immediately dropping into a ridiculous stance and pointing at Cabba with theatrical aggression.
You're going down, Universe 6 boy. Prepare to witness the full, unbridled power of the greatest fused warrior this side of the multiverse.
Cabba blinked, unsure whether to be intimidated or confused, and settled on a polite bow that Gotenks took as a sign of fear. Gotenks dominated the early exchange with ease, his speed and power outclassing Cabba's base form by a clear margin. But instead of pressing the advantage, the fused boy began to stall, circling Cabba with his arms folded, narrating his own superiority, pausing to demonstrate techniques he could have used to end the fight 3 exchanges ago. Cabba, to his credit, stayed calm, kept his guard up, and watched.
Unbelievable.
3 years in a featureless white room teaching them how to finish a fight, and they turn right back into a circus act.
Up in the grandstands, Vegito watched their fight, and his face hardened into pure, unfiltered exasperation. He pinched the bridge of his nose, fighting a sudden headache that had nothing to do with the Potara strain. He had just spent 3 grueling years in the time chamber, explicitly drilling this kind of showboating out of them, yet here they were, throwing all of that discipline away the second they got an audience. The exact same attitude reminded him of his own bad habits.
Was I this insufferable? Gotenks! Stop fooling around and throw the damn punch!
But the warning came too late. Mid-boast, the 30-minute fusion timer expired, and with a comical pop the boys separated mid-pose, standing bewildered and vulnerable on the arena floor. Cabba, polite to the last, apologized before sweeping both stunned children off the stage with a single gentle kick, and the crowd roared with laughter, and Goten and Kid Trunks sat in the dirt, looking at each other with the identical expression of boys who had just learned a lesson the hard way. Vegito was the last fighter standing for Universe 7, and he descended to the ring, and the casual air of the tournament evaporated as the crowd registered the shift in his energy. He faced Cabba, and the two Saiyans stood across from each other with the match on the line, and the arena went quiet, in the way arenas go quiet when the real event is about to begin.
All right, kid. No hard feelings about the boys, but I'm not going easy, just because you're one of my own.
I wouldn't want you to. Show me what a Saiyan from your universe can really do.
They circled once, and then closed the distance at the same instant, and the first exchange was probing, testing, each fighter measuring the other's reflexes before committing to anything real. Vegito let the first several combinations land clean, absorbing Cabba's best strikes without flinching, deliberately baiting the boy into swinging harder, searching for the trigger that would unlock what he suspected was buried in the kid's bloodline.
Come on, that's it! But you're pulling your punches. Somewhere in there is a Saiyan who actually wants to hit me. Find him!
Cabba dropped to one knee, his chest heaving as he wiped a streak of blood from his chin. The sheer, suffocating wall of his opponent's power was too much. He lowered his stance and raised a trembling hand toward the referee.
I can't. The gap in our power is too wide. I surrender.
He didn't finish the word. Vegito crossed the ring in a fraction of a second, driving a brutal, breath-stealing punch deep into the boy's stomach that dropped him back to the stone.
Surrender! Don't play around with me, boy!
I'm a protector of my universe.
I don't throw my life away in a tournament I can't win.
And what happens when a real threat shows up? Someone who won't accept your polite little surrender? Do you just drop to your knees and let them burn your world? Is that the pride of a Universe 6 Saiyan? You're a coward in a uniform.
Cabba's eyes widened. The insult cut far deeper than the physical blow, striking right at the absolute core of his identity.
Don't you dare! Mock my duty!
Frustration and shame finally shattered Cabba's composure. The defeat in his eyes vanished, swallowed instantly by a white-hot fury. Gold light erupted around him for the first time, his hair snapping upward as the sheer pressure of his anger cracked the arena stone under his boots. Vegito let him go as the aura flared, stepping back with a genuine, satisfied grin. He had found exactly what he was looking for. The exchange that followed was fast and genuinely dangerous. Cabba's raw Super Saiyan aggression meeting Vegito's effortless technique, and then Vegito slipped inside a wild haymaker and drove one measured, respectful punch into Cabba's stomach, folding him out of bounds without ceremony. The fight was over, clean and decisive, and Cabba lay on the stone outside the ring gasping for air. Vegito walked over with a bucket of water someone had left ringside and splashed it across Cabba's face, jolting him awake. The young Saiyan blinked, sat up, and immediately bowed his head toward the man who had beaten him. Vegito's expression hardened instantly, and his voice carried a sharp edge that was not anger, but something adjacent to it.
Don't forget this feeling. That anger? That's your foundation now. Never bow to an enemy, and never accept a loss before the fight is over. A Saiyan's pride means you refuse to stay down. You got it?
Yes, I understand.
The edge softened as fast as it had risen, and Vegito crouched down to Cabba's level, his voice dropping into something quieter.
Good. You've got the instincts of a protector, but you need the power to actually back it up. Keep pushing that transformation. I want to see what the Saiyans of this universe are actually capable of.
You really are a lot like our commanding officers. Our king back on Sadala is just as strict about our pride as you are. If you ever visit our world, I think you two would actually get along.
Yeah? Sounds like my kind of guy. Tell him I said hello, and tell him I'll come shake his hand myself one of these days. Soon.
Cabba grinned, wobbled to his feet, and limped toward his own team's bench, casting one last look back at the fused warrior who had just rewritten his understanding of what a Saiyan could be. In the stands, the Universe 6 team watched him come back with expressions ranging from concern to calculation, and Hit, who had not moved from his spot at the end of the bench, simply looked at the ring and waited. Hit stepped forward, and the tournament became the fight it had been built toward. The assassin crossed onto the arena stone without a wasted motion, his coat swaying with the deliberate calm of a man who had killed 1,000 targets in 1,000 years and had never once needed to rush. Vegito stood across from him, and the energy between them was different from any previous match, heavier, more precise, the air of two professionals recognizing each other's craft.
I have heard the rumors about you, Fused One. 2 souls in one body, permanent, unbreakable. I would like to see for myself what that is worth.
Careful what you wish for. I've been dying to test myself against someone who doesn't fold in half.
The instant they clashed, Hit bypassed Vegito's guard entirely, and a precise, devastating blow drove into his ribs and folded him in midair before he had registered the attack beginning. Vegito hit the ground hard, sliding across the stone, genuine shock on his face.
Your power is immense, Fused One, but you live inside the seconds. I do not. If this were a contract, you would already be dead.
Vegito rose slowly, rolling his shoulder. The grin that came back wasn't confusion. It was full understanding, wearing a smile. He flared into Super Saiyan, the golden aura snapping to life. The earrings hummed faintly at the sudden surge of ki, but the metal remained cool against his skin. This level of output was sustainable, a calculated limit to keep the fusion from burning itself out too early. Sinking into a low, grounded stance, Vegito locked his eyes on the assassin. Rushing in blindly against an unknown technique was a death sentence. He needed to dissect exactly how Hit was moving before he threw a single serious strike. The second exchange went the same way as the first. Hit vanished, and a blow landed from an angle Vegito had not been guarding, and then another, and another, the assassin's time skip carrying him through gaps in the fused warrior's defense that should not have existed. Each strike was precise, targeted, aimed at nerve clusters and joints, and the soft spaces between armor, the work of a professional who knew exactly where a body was most vulnerable. Vegito took the beating, unable to counter strikes he couldn't even see. Up in the grandstands, the usual noise died completely. Chi-Chi gripped the front railing, the thick metal groaning and warping under her tightening fingers, while Bulma let her scanner slip and clatter onto the floorboards, completely forgotten. Piccolo stood rigid, his jaw clenched, while Gohan instinctively moved a half-step in front of Goten and Trunks, as if shielding the boys from the brutal, one-sided dismantling of their fathers. Across the arena, Champa's booming laugh cut through the silence, loudly asking Vados if this glorified punching bag was actually supposed to be the strongest mortal in the multiverse. Beerus didn't even yell back. He remained comfortably seated, resting his chin on his knuckles, as his eyes tracked the brutal exchange below. The god of destruction knew exactly the kind of power his champion was holding back. Because Vegito was still standing, he spat a mouthful of blood onto the arena stone, rolled his neck until it popped, and wiped his chin. And between hits he was grinning, and the grin was not performance but something real, as he stared the assassin down.
Is that all you got?
It wasn't a taunt, it was a calibration. Hit didn't react visibly, but his stance shifted just a fraction of an inch. A professional killer knew exactly what it meant when a target started asking questions mid-beating instead of begging for mercy. Hit's eyes narrowed, seeing past the golden aura to the massive, volatile reservoir of ki the Saiyan was deliberately refusing to touch.
You're throttling your output.
The assassin didn't shift his stance. His voice was completely flat, devoid of any mocking edge.
You have the power to end this right now, but you won't. If you push your energy any higher, you'll shatter whatever is holding you together.
He delivered the assessment as a cold, professional fact. Vegito didn't reply, but the slight, involuntary tightening of his jaw was all the confirmation the assassin needed. Vegito began to fight differently. He stopped trying to react to Hit's attacks and started trying to predict them, watching the assassin's shoulders, his weight distribution, the micro-adjustments of his stance that preceded each time skip by a fraction of a second. He threw strikes not at where hit was, but at where hit was going to be, and the first time his fist connected with empty air because hit had skipped to a different position than predicted, he adjusted, and the next strike caught the assassin's forearm mid-teleport.
Interesting. Perhaps that was luck.
Or maybe you're not the only one who can learn fast.
They traded a long, brutal sequence at a speed that blurred the ring itself, and the dynamic shifted, not suddenly but gradually, Vegito's prediction rate climbing with every exchange, the gaps in his defense closing one by one as he built a model of the assassin's timing in his head and started filling in the blanks. Hit adapted too, drawing on stored slivers of time, extending his skips deeper, attacking from angles that defied the geometry of the ring. But Vegito adapted faster. Each improvement the assassin made answered within 2 exchanges, the gap between them narrowing.
You are the first who has kept up with me. In 1,000 years, the first.
Then consider it a privilege. But don't blink, because I'm done warming up. Don't let your guard down.
And then Vegito shifted, and the shift wasn't a bigger number. It was a different register entirely. Vegito exhaled, letting the raging golden aura snap out of existence. The arena plunged into a brief, heavy quiet before a sudden, suffocating pressure rolled over the stone. A deep crimson flame ignited around him, the aura burning with absolute, tranquil control. He was deliberately bypassing his absolute peak. Through his training on Beerus's planet, he had refined the Super Saiyan God form to perfect efficiency, a state of stabilized divine ki that gave him the God-level speed to counter hit without putting as much strain on the Potara earrings that the blue form would. And the difference showed in the way Vegito moved, smoother, faster, more economical, every motion stripped of waste. The fight ended in a flurry that the crowd could barely follow. Vegito read a time skip perfectly, baited the strike, dropped his guard on purpose, and the instant hit materialized inside his reach. His hand was already there, closed around the assassin's fist. The look on Hit's face was the closest thing to surprise the 1,000-year-old professional had ever shown. And then Vegito drove a single, decisive blow into his chest, and the assassin tumbled from the ring in a shower of dust, defeated cleanly, without spectacle, without waste. Vegito cut the God key the second the match was called, the heavy crimson flame vanishing instantly into the air. He stood in the center of the broken ring, his chest heaving with deep, measured breaths. The exhaustion wasn't a lack of stamina, it was the sheer, suffocating mental toll of the match. Countering a time-skipping assassin required absolute, unrelenting focus, a lethal guessing game played while he was simultaneously throttling his own immense power to keep the Potara earrings from shattering under the pressure. It had been a brutal, exhausting tightrope walk, but as the crowd erupted into genuine applause, Vegito allowed himself a satisfied smirk, knowing he had dismantled the deadliest killer in Universe 6 with perfect calculation rather than raw, self-destructive force. Hit rose across the stone, dusted himself off, and looked up at the fused warrior. The expression on his face read as something rarer than the cold blankness of a professional, merely inconvenienced, something that looked almost like curiosity. He did not speak. He tilted his head slightly, and the corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile exactly, but an acknowledgement, the silent recognition of one professional for another who had given him something he had not felt in a very long time. The sensation of being outmaneuvered by a fighter who took the craft seriously. In the staging area, Beerus was already on his feet and turned toward his brother, wearing a smile Champa had endured for millions of years and hated more each time.
I'll give you this, brother. Hit was every bit as formidable as you promised. That makes the look on your face so much better.
Champa shot upright, fists shaking at his sides.
That was, that doesn't count.
Oh, it counts. The ring has an edge. Hit crossed it, and you agreed to the rules. I can ask Vados to draw you a diagram.
Keep talking, and I'll throw you over that edge myself.
After watching your entire team lose, I doubt you need another demonstration.
Champa's teeth ground together. Beerus allowed him a few seconds to simmer before casually inspecting his claws.
Now, I seem to remember you wagering something large, orange, and extremely difficult to hide.
Don't act like you forgot about the Super Dragon Balls.
I didn't forget. I was giving you time to practice saying goodbye.
The celebration did not last because the tournament had drawn the attention of parties who had not been invited. High in the spectator stands, the Supreme Kai of Universe 9, Ro, stood up, his grating voice cutting across the arena's buzz like a knife through fabric.
Is this the so-called ultimate mortal you've been bragging about, Beerus? He looks pathetic. A true warrior doesn't start gasping for air after a single match. Allow Universe 9 to show you what real, unbroken stamina looks like.
Champa, delighted by the sudden chaos and unbothered that his own team had already lost, seized the opportunity to twist the knife with the enthusiasm of a sibling who had never once in his existence let a moment of schadenfreude pass him by.
Quite right, Rue. What's the matter, Beerus? Too fragile for a second round? Let's see if your precious mortal can handle a little extra credit.
Do something! He already won your silly tournament. They can't rewrite the rules just because.
I know the rules, woman.
Then enforce them.
And let Champa claim my mortal champion needed a god to rescue him? That bloated pest would repeat it for the next 1,000 years.
So this is about your ego.
It is about refusing to reward an obvious provocation.
Beerus could have ended the challenge with a word. Rue had no authority over the tournament, and everyone present knew it. Stepping in now, however, would hand Champa the only consolation he had left, the chance to call Vegito's victory incomplete. Before Bulma could answer, Vegito's voice carried up from the ring.
Hold on.
Huh?
Huh?
Vegito rolled his aching shoulder and turned toward the Universe 9 grandstand. Fatigue weighed down his stance, yet a sharp grin remained on his face. He raised one hand and beckoned Ro's fighters toward the ring.
I say let them bring it on.
3 figures dropped from the stands in unison. Bergamo, Basil, and Lavender, the trio de Danger, 3 wolf brothers who landed on the arena stone with the coordinated precision of a pack that had been hunting together since birth. They circled the drained Vegito in a tight triangle, and the formation was seamless, each brother covering the other's blind spots, and they came in fast and together, landing rapid-fire strikes that knocked the fused warrior back and forth across the stone. Bergamo caught Vegito's sluggish counterpunch and drove a knee into his ribs. Basil followed with a kick to the shoulder, sending him toward Lavender, who struck him from the opposite side and knocked him back between the brothers. The trio de Danger began treating the fight like a game. They passed Vegito around their formation, laughing about the great champion running on empty and calling him their personal punching bag. Between attacks, they loudly praised their coordination and boasted that no single fighter could overcome 3 brothers acting as one. Of all the people in the arena, they had chosen to lecture Vegito about fighting as one. His jaw tightened with every boast, and what remained of his patience quickly ran dry. Vegito caught himself at the stage's edge, his boots skidding, his breath shallow, the 3 wolves already circling for another pass. He lowered his head and released a long, irritated sigh. He had spent years balancing 2 sets of instincts within a single body. Listening to 3 overgrown puppies boast about teamwork had finally used up his patience.
I said, that's enough!
He did not transform. He did not power up in any conventional sense. A single, explosive shockwave of ki erupted from his exhausted core, a pure physical manifestation of annoyance, and the burst caught all 3 brothers mid-stride and swept them off the platform and into the void like leaves caught in a hurricane. The Universe 9's God of Destruction, along with Supreme Kai, fell silent, their jaws hanging open. In the Universe 11 grandstand, Top watched the trio de Danger disappear beyond the ring. He turned toward his Supreme Kai, his fists held rigidly at his sides.
Lord Kai, permit me to enter. This mockery has gone far enough. I will show him the strength of Universe 11.
Kai studied Vegito from across the arena, torn clothes, accumulated injuries, fading stamina, and enough power left to remove 3 fighters at once. His eyes shifted back to Top, and he gave a measured nod, stepped over the railing and dropped into the arena. His landing shook the platform, blasting dust outward from beneath his boots. He rose to his full height and pointed across the ring at Vegito.
Your arrogance ends here, mortal. I am top of the Pride Troopers, and in the name of absolute justice, I will show you what true strength looks like.
Vegito straightened as much as his battered body allowed and gave the towering warrior a tired smirk.
You guys really don't know when to quit.
Bulma whirled on Beerus as another crack spread across the arena floor.
Another one? How many fighters are you going to let them send down there before you finally stop this?
Don't blame me. I declared the tournament over. Apparently, every universe brought an idiot who thinks rules are optional.
You're the god of destruction. Make them optional somewhere else.
I was about to handle it before you started shrieking in my ear.
Whis rested both hands over the top of his staff.
In fairness, my lord, touring the other universes and introducing Vegito as your unbeatable mortal champion was your idea.
I did not tour. We made several necessary detours,
during which you announced his superiority to every deity who would listen.
I informed them.
At considerable volume.
Beerus's eye twitched. He leaned over the railing and shouted toward the ring.
Hey, Vegito! You invited this nonsense, so finish it! Show that self-righteous windbag what happens when he interrupts my victory!
Your victory?
Now is not the time.
Vegito glanced back at them and rolled his aching shoulder.
Heh, I was planning on it.
Hit's precision strikes still burned beneath Vegito's skin. Every breath pulled at his ribs. One arm answered a fraction too slowly, and sharp pain ran through the points the assassin had targeted. The god form had spared the earrings from severe damage, though the concentration required to maintain it had drained him. Top now stood across from him fresh, rested, and powerful enough to be considered for the mantle of Destroyer. Top lowered his center of gravity and charged. His first punch was brutal and precise, and Vegito barely slipped past it by inches, only for Top's other hand to sweep around and seize the torn shoulder of his gi. The cloth ripped as Vegito twisted free. Top pursued immediately, alternating heavy punches with crushing grabs that forced Vegito backward across the ring. Vegito ducked beneath one arm, stumbled away from the next, and caught a glancing forearm across his ribs. Top gave him no room to recover. Each escape came later than the last. Top drove him toward the platform's edge and opened both arms, ready to lock him inside a crushing hold. Vegito searched for an angle and found none. His breathing slowed, his fists loosened. With Top closing in, he stopped forcing his body to obey every calculation running through his head. A thin, purple-gray aura traced Vegito's shoulders and arms. His black hair remained unchanged, and no surge of pressure followed. His eyes settled half-closed as Top's hands closed around empty air. Vegito had already moved. Top spun and attacked again. Vegito tilted past the first punch, turned beneath the second, and slipped around a sweeping grab without lifting his guard. Top accelerated. Every strike missed by less than an inch. Vegito's body found each opening before the danger fully registered in his mind. A heavy fist passed across his cheek. Vegito's head had already turned with its path. Top's knee rose toward his stomach. His hips shifted aside before he saw it coming. The movement carried no hesitation and wasted nothing. Top roared and committed his full weight to one final charge. Vegito flowed outside the attack and appeared beside him. For the first time since the aura emerged, his movement paused. The evasions had come freely. The counterattack still required a choice. Vegito's eyes opened. His brow tightened. His fist drew back, and every trace of frustration from the relentless challenges drove forward with it. His punch crashed into Top's chest as the Pride Trooper surged forward. The collision split the stone beneath them and released a violent shockwave across the ring. Top's feet left the ground, and his own momentum carried him faster as he flew backward, tore through the boundary, and disappeared beyond the platform's blue edge. Silence swept across the arena. The purple-gray aura receded from Vegito's body. His balance faltered, and he caught himself with one foot before staring at his open hands. The evasions remained clear in his memory, though he could not remember choosing any of them. The punch felt different, rough, deliberate, forced into place through aggression and instinct. For those few seconds, his body had understood how to escape every attack. Striking back had still belonged to him. Vegito flexed his fingers as the last traces of the aura vanished between them. Above the ring, Whis leaned forward and lowered his staff. Beerus's ears lifted, his eyes fixed on the faint purple-gray light fading from his champion's skin.
Oh my, could it be? No, that's far too early. But that movement carried no thought behind it at all.
Beside him, Beerus's jaw hung open.
Hey, Whis, was that what I think it was?
Yes, my lord.
The arena remained silent. Universe 9 met the result with clenched jaws and bitter stares. Top pulled himself back into the stands, brushed the dust from his uniform, and held Vegito's gaze before giving him a stiff nod. Across the other sections, fighters who had treated the tournament as entertainment now leaned forward and studied the battered Saiyan at the center of the ring. A few exchanged quiet words, none looked away. Only Hit, already eliminated, sitting in the Universe 6 grand stand with his hands in pockets, gave anything that could be called a gesture of acknowledgement. The assassin looked across the arena at the fused warrior, and the corner of his mouth moved, a precise, controlled thing that was not a smile, but served the same function, the recognition of one craftsman for another, who had given him a reason to improve, and Vegito caught it from across the ring and returned it with a nod that was equally minimal and equally sufficient. Then the air changed, and every god in the arena felt it at the same instant, a presence descending that was not announced and not summoned and not expected, a pressure that skipped the build-up entirely and simply arrived, total and immediate, already overhead before anyone thought to look up. The temperature of the entire arena seemed to drop at once. The Omni-King, Lord Zeno, had descended, and every god in the arena went rigid. Beerus's composure shattered into something that looked, for the first time in the entire story, like genuine, undiluted fear, and both he and Champa dropped to their knees, their foreheads pressed against the cold stone. Vados and Whis bowed low beside them, and the mortal fighters stood frozen, not certain whether to kneel or run, because neither option seemed adequate to the moment. And then Zeno appeared, and the dissonance was staggering, because the supreme ruler of every universe in existence looked like a small child in a purple and yellow coat, round-faced, bright-eyed, floating with a placid smile above the arena, the picture of someone who'd wandered in hoping to find something fun on a quiet afternoon. 2 attendants flanked him, expressionless and still, and the 3 of them hovered there with the casual ease of visitors at a parade. Zeno surveyed the arena with idle curiosity. The destroyers pressed their foreheads to the stone, the angels remained bowed, and the mortals stood frozen. When his eyes reached Vegito, he stopped. He tilted his head, sensing 2 complete souls joined within a single body. Nothing else among the gathered universes felt quite like him. Vegito felt every eye turned to him, felt the weight of Beerus's silent, frantic instruction to kneel, and he made his choice. He did not bow. He walked forward with easy confidence, and he stopped in front of the tiny god with an unguarded grin that was warm and completely without fear.
Hey, I'm Vegito. Hell of a tournament, right? Glad you could come watch. It got a bit messy at the end, but I hope you had fun.
Zeno stared up at the fused warrior for a long, unreadable moment, before his small face broke into a delighted smile.
You're funny, and you feel strange. Like 2 people at once. I've never felt anyone like you before. I like you.
Yeah, well, it's a long story. 2 guys, 1 body, permanent arrangement. Weird, I know. But it seems to work out all right when we need to get things done.
Hey, I'd like to see you fight again sometime. Something big, with lots of strong people from everywhere.
Set something up and I'll be there. I'm not hard to find, apparently.
Zeno floated backward, waved a small hand in the same lazy motion someone uses to dismiss a pleasant afternoon, and vanished as abruptly as he had come, and the arena remained frozen for a long, stretched moment before the gods slowly rose from the stone. With the arena cleared of challengers, the question of the final Super Dragon Ball remained. Beerus wanted his prize, and Champa was in no position to refuse, and the accumulated orbs hung overhead in the void like a constellation of missed opportunities. But the 7th was still missing, and the radar in Bulma's hands kept pinging a signal it couldn't place. The source somehow all around them. Monaka, who had been standing at the back of the staging area the entire time, looked down at the ground he was standing on and frowned. He kicked at the stone with 1 boot, and the surface cracked in a way that stone should not crack, the fracture revealing something underneath that was smooth and luminous and gold. Monaka raised 1 hand and quietly pointed out that the ground looked strange. Whisk examined the exposed gold, glanced toward the sky, and smiled.
Of course, the nameless planet. We've been standing on it the entire time.
Whis raised his staff, and the rocky shell of the planet's surface peeled away in sheets, revealing the final Super Dragon Ball in its entirety, a sphere the size of a world glowing with a light that made every mortal present shield their eyes, and the 7 orbs were complete at last, hanging in the void like 7 suns, waiting to be asked a question. Whis raised his staff, and the god language poured from him in a stream of syllables that sounded like nothing mortal and everything divine, the ancient words that ended with something that sounded, to mortal ears, like peas and carrots, and the 7 spheres blazed, and the void between universes split apart, and Super Shenron rose. The dragon was a colossus that made the orbs it was born from look like marbles, a divine serpent vast enough to coil around galaxies, its eyes like burning suns, its body a river of golden light that filled the sky from horizon to horizon. Every mortal present stood with their mouth open, because the Super Dragon Balls operated on a tier of reality that reminded everyone, divine and mortal alike, that there were always bigger things. Super Shenron opened his jaws, and Whis' cube lurched forward. The dragon swallowed the vessel whole. Stars and empty space disappeared behind a flood of gold, leaving everyone suspended within a vast chamber of living light. When the cube steadied, a smaller golden dragon waited before them, the nucleus through which Super Shenron received his wishes. Bulma hardly noticed the others recovering around her. Since leaving Zuno's palace, she had buried his answer beneath radar calculations, tournament preparations, and every other problem she could solve with her hands. The answer itself had remained painfully simple. Yes. The fusion could be undone. She found Vegito among the crowd, bruised and wrapped in the remains of his gi. Her grip tightened around the radar until the casing creaked. Bulma lowered the radar and moved toward Whis. Her first steps were measured. The last few were nearly a run.
Whis, translate this exactly. Separate Vegito and restore Goku and Vegeta, alive and whole, as they were before the Potara fused them.
Whis' eyes widened a fraction. He turned his staff toward Super Shenron's nucleus, and Bulma held her breath. After years without an answer, only a sentence in the divine language stood between her and Vegeta. Beerus slipped between them and planted one palm against Bulma's forehead, holding her away from Whis at arm's length.
What do you think you're doing, woman?
Making the wish. Take your hand off my face.
You are doing no such thing.
Bulma slapped his hand aside and tried to move around him. Beerus shifted with her, blocking the path again.
Vegito won that tournament.
As my champion.
You spent half the tournament slacking off.
Beerus clenched his teeth in frustration.
That dragon can bring Vegeta and Goku home. You know what this means.
I know it means spending my wish to split apart the champion who earned it.
You just admitted he earned it.
For me! He earned it for me.
That isn't how earning something works.
Beerus folded his arms and planted his feet, his tail striking the floor behind him. Bulma stared him down from inches away. Neither moved.
I know exactly what you're asking, Bulma. The terms were settled before you decided you wanted the reward.
Vegito is the reason you have a reward.
I'm aware of that.
You've eaten at my table, trained with him, and dragged him across the multiverse so you could brag about him. Don't stand there and treat this like it has nothing to do with you.
Beerus's tail stopped lashing. His eyes shifted briefly toward Vegito before returning to Bulma.
I never said that.
Then use the wish for him.
You don't know what I intend to wish for.
Then tell me.
No.
The answer came quickly. The hesitation before it did not. Into the gap came a voice that hadn't been part of the argument until now.
Bring them back.
Everyone turned. Chi-Chi stood a few feet off with her arms crossed, and she said it again, quieter but no softer.
Both of them. That's the wish.
Oh, wonderful. Now there's two of you.
Bulma and I have had each other's backs for years. Right now, we're asking you for the same thing.
I already told her. It's my wish. I get to decide what happens to it, and I've decided.
Then decide better.
Beerus's tail thumped hard against the ground, and his voice climbed a full octave. Caught between two women who weren't backing down, Vegito had gone still when Bulma spoke the wish aloud. His hand rose halfway toward one Potara earring, then stopped. He crossed to the two women instead, said nothing, and set one hand on Chi-Chi's shoulder and the other on Bulma's. He smiled, small and certain, and gave a slow nod, side to side, asking them without a single word to let it go, just this once. Chi-Chi's eyes went bright first, and she blinked hard against it. Bulma pressed her lips together and looked away, her jaw working. Neither of them argued. Around them, the rest of the cube had gone quiet in its own way. Gohan's arms crossed and his jaw set. Piccolo motionless by the wall. Krillin staring at a spot on the floor that didn't need staring at. Videl's hand tight around Gohan's. Even Goten and Trunks gone still for once. Every face in that room wanting the exact same thing and knowing it wasn't coming. Beerus watched all of it from where he stood, and something in his usual bluster faltered for half a second, his ears dropping before he caught himself and folded his arms tighter. Whis noticed him notice and said nothing at all, which somehow carried more weight than if he had. Beerus made his wish anyway. He leaned toward Whis and delivered the wish under his breath. Whis raised his staff and repeated it in the divine language, his voice clear and formal. Super Shenron's eyes blazed. Far across the divide between universes, oceans filled an empty basin, continents reformed, and cities returned as Universe 6's Earth was restored.
There. Done. Don't all look at me like that. It's not like the orbs are gone forever. 1 year, they recharge. You'll get your shot. Happy?
No one answered him. The dragon dissolved into streaks of gold light, and the 7 orbs scattered back across 2 universes to sleep. Whis stepped over to where Bulma and Chi-Chi stood, his usual dry amusement gone from his face.
I'm afraid the wish was never mine to grant. For what it's worth, I wish it had gone differently.
He gave a small, apologetic chuckle, an angel's version of a shrug, because there was genuinely nothing else he had to offer them. The cube turned for home not long after, and the ride back was quiet in the specific way a room goes quiet once everyone already knows the ending. Later that night, Bulma and Chi-Chi sat together at Capsule Corporation's kitchen table. Bulma worked at her laptop, building a new search schedule around the Super Dragon Ball's 1-year recharge cycle. The inactive radar rested beside her. Chi-Chi slowly repaired Vegito's torn gi, guiding a needle through the battered fabric, and smoothing each finished seam across her lap. Neither woman tried to start a conversation. By midnight, Bulma's screen was filled with orbital projections, and the largest tear in the gi was almost closed. On Beerus's planet, after the mortals had gone home and the quiet had settled back into its usual shape, Beerus lay stretched across his favorite cushion with his eyes shut, and we stood a short distance off, watching the stars turn overhead.
Bulma and Chi-Chi were rather determined today. It isn't every day a god of destruction gets asked for something so personal. Most mortals only ever ask you not to destroy things.
Beerus didn't open his eyes, but his tail, which had been flicking lazily against the stone, went still. He answered with a dismissive grunt and rolled onto his side, turning his back to Whis. Whis casually noted that the Super Dragon Balls would reactivate in 1 year, and that Bulma had already begun preparing for their return. Beerus showed no interest until he quietly asked whether her radar could track them across both universes. Whis confirmed that it could. Beerus settled deeper into the cushion and offered no explanation for the question. His tail began moving again, slower than before. Whis turned his attention back to the stars, unbothered, unhurried, already fairly certain how this would end. Far away in Universe 10, Zamasu and Gowasu sat across from each other for their customary tea. The halls around them were quiet. Gowasu poured his cup and shared the news with open satisfaction.
Quite the event over in Universe 7, they say. Beerus's mortal won again. Remarkable how far the mortals climb when we give them room to grow.
Zamasu had already heard. Since his humiliation, he had followed every report concerning Vegito. God spoke his name. The Omni-King himself had taken an interest. The memory of their encounter returned whenever Zamasu closed his eyes. The effortless dismissal, the folded arms, the cutting smirk of a mortal looking down upon a god. He had studied the fusion afterward and learned the names of the 2 Saiyans within it. Goku supplied the appetite for battle. The sharper contempt came from Prince Vegeta, a warrior whose pride allowed him to stand before divinity without lowering his eyes. That was the part Zamasu could not forgive. He wanted that pride stripped from its mortal owner and placed under divine command. He would wear the prince's face, wield his strength, and force his arrogance to serve the judgment of a god. Zamasu poured the next cup without watching his hand. The tea emerged dark and clouded. Gowasu examined it, then looked toward his apprentice.
Your heart is disturbing the tea again, Zamasu.
Zamasu set down the pot. This time, he offered no defense. When Gowasu turned away, Zamasu struck. His master died before the cup beside him stopped trembling. Zamasu removed the green Potara from Gowasu's ear and opened the case containing the time rings. Across Universe 10, Rumshi vanished with the Supreme Kai whose life had sustained his own. Zamasu placed the Potara upon his ear and took the silver ring. The authority and instruments of a Supreme Kai now belonged to him. He searched the branching histories for the vessel he desired. Since in our timeline, Vegeta's body and power had become part of Vegito, a fused vessel already carrying 2 complete souls. Zamasu had no desire to inherit that union. His obsession centered on the royal pride he had traced to Vegeta, preserved in its original face and form. The time ring carried him from one branch to another until he reached the ruined future created by the androids. In that history, Vegeta had died years earlier. The androids had destroyed his body long before he could reach the strength of his present counterpart. Only scattered remains marked where the prince had fallen. Zamasu gathered that timeline's Super Dragon Balls and presented his wish: reconstruct Vegeta's body from ash, restore it to the age and physical power of the prince who had become Vegito in our timeline, the mortal half of the fusion that had humiliated him. The dead Saiyan's soul was to be left completely undisturbed in the afterlife, and Zamasu's divine soul placed directly inside the completed vessel. The golden dragon's eyes flared to grant the request. Back on Earth, Ash and dust lifted from the ruined ground, drawing together to weave bone, muscle, and restored flesh. A dark aura formed across the reconstructed body in black and deep violet. No mortal soul returned with it. The vessel opened its eyes. Divine Ki flared through the stolen Saiyan vessel, and the prince's mouth curled into a cold, superior smirk. The sheer, overwhelming power that had once disgusted the god now answered directly to his will. Zamasu traveled deeper into the ruined timeline and approached its native counterpart. He found the same resentment already taking root and offered it direction. Together, they gathered the Super Dragon Balls after their next awakening, and the second Zamasu made himself immortal. With one wearing the prince's reconstructed body and the other freed from death, they began the Zero Mortals plan. No one knew what had taken shape in the future. No one saw the first cities burn or the last survivors retreat underground. They would learn soon enough, when a rift opened above their world and dropped a battered young man onto their doorstep with nowhere else to run. That is a story for the rift, and the black that comes next.